So let's get started. I am going to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about Trova and our goal and our mission. Then we will introduce our career coach, Ms. Emmy, and get started. So my name is Amanda Workman. I am the director of expert services here at Trova.Health. At Trova.Health, we are a company that is built for expats, by expats. Everyone on our founding team and almost all of our expert providers are expats, or all of our providers have at least lived abroad at some time. So you are listening to, or you are working with people who absolutely understand the unique challenges, the crazy joys and uphill roller coasters and downhill battles of living abroad, right? Especially in this particular crazy time. I'm an expat myself. I started my expat life at the age of 7 when my parents took an assignment in Kenya. I grew up there and then have lived in the United States, but worked globally for the majority of my career. And now I am an accidental expat, having come to Botswana, Gaborone, Botswana, to visit my parents in March of last year and got locked down. And now I'm a resident and here to stay for a while. So you just never know what kinds of things that life is going to throw at you. In the meantime, I would love to introduce our certified career coach, Emmy Petersson. We are so glad that she is here. We are so glad that she is a part of Team Trova. I have personally had the joy of working alongside of her for the last 2 years before I said, come join Team Trova and play. And then she came along. So she is a certified coach who has worked with people in transition between career changes, countries, and challenging lifestyles since 2013. She is an expat herself. I will let her tell that part of the story. But her really her mission is to truly help those who are kind of in that in-between space, in that I don't love what I'm doing anymore, or I love what I'm doing, but I don't love where I'm doing it. And so what's next? How do I answer those questions? Emmy is the person to help guide you well through that. So let's go ahead and we'll go on to Emmy. Emmy, would you tell us, as we get started, would you tell us a little bit about your expat experience, where you are now, what you are doing now, and then you can go ahead and I'll work your slides, hopefully.
Beautiful. Thank you, Amanda, and thank you everyone on the call today. My name is Emmy. I am from Sweden originally, where I lived up until my late teens, early 20s. Moved over to San Francisco because I thought that was as far away from Sweden as you can get to see what happens in life. Loved traveling and exploring, and then ended up spending a long time in the UK until I ended up in Australia. That's now my home. And I have lived here just over a decade now and absolutely love it. Live in Melbourne. And for those of you who haven't been to Australia, if you think it's always warm and sunny here, that is not true for the southern part of Australia. It gets quite cold in the winter time. But I absolutely love working with expats, sharing stories with expats, and specifically, like Amanda said, I'm really passionate about career support for people in general, but especially for expats. And career coaching is one of those things, you know, not every career that you have will be a paid career. I work with people sometimes who volunteer their time or do other things. So my long and winding journey started with expat coaching, and I'm really, really grateful to Amanda and the team at Trova that I could kind of come back to focus on working a little bit more with expats again, which fills my heart and my soul a little bit. So yeah, today when it comes to career coaches, so the beautiful Michelle is going to talk you through a lot of beautiful mindfulness tips and tricks after I kind of share a few tips with you first that are more career related. But what I would really encourage you to do is to use, I'm going to share with you 3 questions in just a moment. And I'd like you to set an intention for yourself to listen without judgment and I guess reflect on your answer to some of these questions without passing any judgment or anything at all, but simply just doing a check-in with yourself. And I would also encourage you, perhaps, when we get into the questions, to ask yourself the very same questions again in a few months' time and see if it's still true for you. If you are not working in a paid role at the moment, think about your last job as you answer these questions, or if you volunteer or do other things with your time, the questions are just as valuable anyway. So I think we can dive into question number 1, which is one of the slides somewhere.
You should see it. Do you see question?
Beautiful. Thank you, Amanda. Yeah. Question 1's come up. Thank you so much. So the first question of the 3 to ask yourself, if you're doing a bit of a career check-in or a career reflection, is to ask yourself how happy you are with where and how you work. So when I say where, I mean, how happy are you with the location or the format of your work? A lot of us have obviously had to work a lot from home. My commute nowadays is from my bedroom to the next room, which is where my desk is right now. But think about your work from the perspective of where and how you're working. What channels are you using? Are you using tools like, your Teams, Zoom, other things like that? And what I'd encourage you to reflect on without any judgment is on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is, Emmy, I'm not really that happy. It's pretty crap, to be honest, all the way up to 10, everything is great. I feel really fulfilled and it really works for me. And this question has a lot of elements to it. So you can think about your office or your working space. You can think about the systems that you use. And if you are one of the people who are commuting to a workplace, factor in the commute as well. Because I don't know with you, but there was a time in my life where I used to spend a lot of time in traffic. And for me personally, that's not the kind of commute that works really well for me. So that's essentially just sitting with it. And I want to give you a bit of background before we go to the next question as well. So the reason I've created this framework of these 3 questions to reflect on is that sometimes people come to me, clients come to me, generally speaking, and they say, I'm really unhappy with everything about my job. And very rarely is it actually everything that's wrong. It's a particular element that doesn't feel right. And by going through these 3 questions and by assessing yourself without any judgment and just reflecting on how you feel about it, and feel free after this call to grab a journal and jot down some thoughts or some bullet points about it. By assessing the different areas, you can actually pinpoint where you might need to have a conversation with someone, your manager, whomever, or if you simply need to leave that role and start getting excited about something else instead. Okay, so that was question 1. So in your mind's eye, or if you have a little phone or a notepad or something near you, jot down your answer, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, on how you feel. And question 2 is, how happy are you with the team that you work in and the leaders in your organization? So there's a lot of statistics showing that an awful lot of people who leave their jobs, I think the last stats I saw was like 80 or 90% of people who leave a job usually do so because the direct leadership that manages their day-to-day work. And I know that that stat can look a little bit different in different environments, but either way, it gives us an indication that it's a very strong representation. So again, with your 1 to 10, I would really welcome you to think about the team that you have around you. So this could be a team that reports into you or a team on the same level as you in your work or volunteering place. And I want you to put a number again. So 1, I feel really disconnected and it's not very good at all the way up to 10, which is you feel really aligned, really happy in the team as a whole. And don't overthink these answers, just grab a number and write it down. Whatever the answer you're doing is absolutely perfect because it's just a reflection. It's not a test. It's not something that you need to pass. And the second half is all about the leaders that you work with. So it could be your direct manager, the leadership team of the organization or charity that you work with. How good or how happy are you with the relationship and the flow and the working environment with your leader? 1 being very low, 10 being the highest. And a bonus question that you can ask yourself as well is kind of the broader culture in the company. I don't have a separate question for it, but I feel like it comes into question 2 here because rating the culture or the general feeling, the general friendships, the vibe you get in the workplace or in your volunteering place is also super important, because sometimes you can be really aligned with a team and with a leader, but maybe not with a wider organization. Or the culture can be really, really great, but your leader might not work for you. So by answering on a scale from 1 to 10 on your team, your leader, and the overall culture or the overall feel in your organization, you can start to pinpoint what's working for you and what's not working as well. And moving along to the third and final question when it comes to the career reflection. And this is where most of the people I work with get really stuck, because they always think, when they think about their workplace, they think mostly about the tasks or the work that they do. So the other two questions that we covered, which is the work environment, location, the people, all that kind of stuff. So now we're getting to the third and final question, which is how happy with what specifically. So this is things like your role overall. So again, if we take that number of 1 to 10, and you had to pull a number out of the hat, which number would you give your overall role in terms of how aligned it is for you? You know, how happy does it make you, the things that you get to do and contribute to every day? And it's a good one to reflect on, because sometimes our role changes and morphs into something else over time. I sure know that I've started roles with companies before. I have a background in sales and marketing. And sometimes you'd start a role and the brief for your role or your role description was one thing. And then someone might have left and you might have taken on additional tasks. And all of a sudden your overall role has fundamentally shifted from where you started out. And that can be really exciting, but it can also be really draining. For example, if you haven't had a salary conversation or a conversation with the team about who is now responsible for what. So you might be pulling a lot more of the weight than someone else is, and it could actually lead to a burnout. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how happy are you with your role overall in terms of what you do? And then you can get a bit more granular if you like, again, using the same sliding scale, and think about your tasks or responsibilities day to day specifically. The reason this is a great question is that there is a lot of things many of us are really good at, but that we simply don't enjoy doing. So I'll give you an example. I often get caught organizing events and functions and work parties and things like that, because everyone will turn around and they go, Emmy, you're so good at organizing things. It'd be lovely if you could put together this beautiful party for us or this function for one of our clients. And it's interesting because when I started my career, I actually quite liked doing tasks like that. But as I've gotten older and as I've found other skill sets that I enjoy a lot more, then I kind of feel like I get pigeonholed into doing that thing that I'm really good at. Now, I'll give you a little bonus tip on this one here while we're talking about this. And I call it the three-legged stool or the magic triangle. So a really good role or a really good task, well, sort of a really good opportunity for you to really show your skill set is when three things are present. So the first one being that the role is fun and enjoyable, that you're actually having a laugh or you feel enjoyment or purpose when you are working in the role. It's pleasant for you to be there. The second one, the second leg to the stool, is that it's challenging you, that you're learning and that you're growing, and you know that it's rewarding you with something. And the third and final one is something that you're naturally good at. Because the thing is, we learn new things all the way through our career. I learn new systems and, you know, processes and things like that. And as a coach, I keep learning all the time and have my coaches challenge me to learn and grow. But the interesting thing is that, you know, unless those three things are present in our career, something fun and enjoyable, something that challenges you from time to time, and something you're naturally good at, then you're probably going to find at times that it feels a bit lopsided and wobbly. And when the fun goes out of a role and it's all challenge, you'll probably find yourself looking for other opportunities. And this is, to go back to this question, how happy are you right now, or if you're not working right now in your most recent role, how happy are you on a scale from 1 to 10 with your specific tasks that your role is responsible for? And finally, before I head hand over to the lovely Michelle to take us through the mindfulness is, how happy are you with the learning and growth opportunities in your current workplace? Because learning and growth can come in many forms. It can come through professional development, where there's a dedicated budget for you to take training and learning. Or it could simply be that you're around leaders and other people that really do challenge you and help you grow and take on new projects and things like that. So on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is, there's really no opportunity for me to grow and stretch here at all the way up to 10 being, I get challenged in the healthy amount that suits me to continue to grow and learn and evolve. And I can see what my next role or my next opportunity is likely going to be in the organization. So quick recap of the questions before I hand over. So the first one is to think about how happy you are with where you're working. So the location, the commute, the systems. Secondly, look at how happy you are with the people you've got around you, whether they're leaders or your team. And finally, how happy are you with what you spend most of your time doing? Because if you stack up the amount of hours that most of us do work in a lifetime, it's quite shocking. So make sure that you make something good of it in 2022 and beyond.
Thank you, Emmy. For those of you who are on, I've had several of you, there's several people coming on. You've also popped some questions into the chat. Please feel free to use the chat function to throw some questions up. We would love to, we'll have a question and answer at the end of this. So if you have questions for Emmy or for Michelle, I think that would be a wonderful time to do that. And I'll pull some of those questions out and ask them. Also, Emmy, what a wonderful time of year to be able to kind of go through these. Like, I just went through them yesterday in the practice session, right? Because we are heading into where we're going to have just a little bit of space for some of us. Obviously, some of us, this is our ramping up time, but it's just a really great time to be able to check in and go, hey, where am I in life? So thank you so much for giving us those prompts to be able to begin to assess that. And now we have the incredible Michelle Frost, who's going to, let me give an introduction to her. Again, I've had the privilege of spending about the same amount of time with Michelle, have done some of her mindfulness work, did some of it yesterday when we ran through our practice run, and it was very much needed for my life in that moment. Specifically, I was having a little bit of an existential crisis as an expat, as happens, where I was just missing. I love my life here in Gaborone, but I was very much missing out on the fact that I'm not going home for the holidays, which was part of my plans. Wasn't obviously part of the design, but it was part of my plans. And so walking through this really helped me yesterday. So I hope that it will help some of you as well. So let me give an introduction to Michelle, who is coming to us from Tasmania. I had to look that up on a map, just for anyone else who doesn't quite know where that is. It's somewhere in Australia / close to Australia. It's still very confusing, but Michelle is Michelle Frost is a mindfulness coach and an addicted runner. She is constantly talking about running, has a podcast where she interviews runners. She has been exploring mindfulness really for about the past decade, after she herself went through some stressful times in both her career and her family. So has kind of dedicated her work, because it was so transformative for her, has dedicated her work to helping others really better understand how to use mindfulness in their own life. So with that, I will toss it over to Michelle, who will also tell us a little bit about, she is not currently an expat, but has been one. So she'll tell us a little bit about her experience and then jump right in.
Thank you, Amanda. What a lovely introduction. I really appreciate it. And wasn't Emmy's presentation amazing? If you could just move on to, I think there might be an introduction slide next. That would be awesome. There you go. That's perfect. Thank you. So why am I here? Being that I live in Tasmania in Australia, which is, for those of you who want to know, I'm actually quite close to Emmy, who's in Melbourne. So Tasmania is the island that hangs off the bottom of Australia. And as Emmy pointed out, it's not all sunshine and beaches, although we have a lot of beaches and a lot of sunshine. We also have snow and cold as well. We have all the seasons here. So it's not as you might typically think of Australia. But why am I actually here talking to you in this format with Trova and with as an expat company? And the reason is that I was once an expat for a while. I had 3 of my 5 children and my husband. We all traveled for almost 2 years around the world doing different things. We were working overseas and different contracts and things like that. And when Amanda was talking about this particular presentation and what it's actually like to be an expat during this holiday season, I said, please let me come on and chat and give some tips to help you get through this time, because it is particularly challenging. As Amanda said a minute ago, yesterday, she realized it, as did Emmy. They both spoke to me about how challenging they're finding it at the moment, because even though they love where they are, this holiday time has all the, all this emotion comes up, and there's other places we'd rather be often. So mindfulness gives us that opportunity to create space to work out what these emotions are, to sit with them, to work out how we move through this in the most positive way and make the most of it by being present. And not only that, the things that Emmy talked to you about, they require a little bit of mental space as well. So mindfulness gives you that. This is a crazy time. We're very busy. If you don't have the time to actually put into asking yourself the questions that Emmy posed earlier, then maybe you'll end up in 2022, December of 2022, and haven't made any changes when perhaps you could have if you'd reflected a little bit. So what I want to do today is share with you some tips that can bring mindfulness into your life right now. Before we pop over to that slide, Amanda, I just wanted to talk a little bit about why mindfulness is so important. As I said, it creates space, but it also reduces stress. And that's scientifically proven to reduce stress. You probably know that you have a lot of thoughts every day. If you did the poll on your way in here, then that would have asked you how many thoughts you think you do have in a day. The research at the moment is saying, because can you imagine this is quite a hard thing to research, but they're saying that we have between 6,000 and 40,000 thoughts in a day. That's a lot of thoughts, even if it's down at the just over 6,000 thoughts in a day. That's a lot going on in our mind. One thing that you probably have not thought about, or you may have, and that is that you can't really focus on one thing at one time. So we've got all these thoughts, they're racing through our minds. We're ruminating about things in the past. We're sort of worrying about things in the future. And there's not really a lot of space for being right now unless we're intentional about it. And that's really what mindfulness is about. It's becoming more intentional. Before we move on to the 3 tips, I just want to do a fun exercise, because once upon a time I was a primary school teacher. So these sorts of things are fun for me. So hopefully they'll be for you as well. I want you to pick up your hands and imagine, just wheel them around a bit. Just imagine your hands are your thoughts. Now take them and put them over your eyes and look through. What's your vision like? Is it clear? If it's anything like mine, and I'm sure it is right now, there's something in the way, and that's all these thoughts. Now drop your hands down. Your thoughts are still here, but they're just not in front of your eyes. They're down here. Now that's to demonstrate just what our thoughts do. They block our vision. They create this barrier. So with mindfulness, the idea is really, we don't get rid of the thoughts. They still exist. We're just giving our vision a bit of space. So hopefully that's a good visual for you as to why, what mindfulness is about and how our thoughts work in relation to that. I'm going to teach you a few anchors that you can use every day, even if you don't have a lot of time. And that's another thing that most of us talk about. We don't have any time. So if we want to move on now, Amanda, to the first slide, where I will introduce the first anchor. And an anchor is something that you focus on, because as I said before, we find it really challenging to focus on more than one thing at a time as human beings. It's just how our brains work. We still have lots of things going on, but the focus just on one thing. So an anchor focuses you in the here and now and in the present, which is a very important element, obviously, of mindfulness, which I think we all know. So at any moment in your day, you're actually breathing already. In fact, most moments of every day, you're already breathing, I hope. So this is not a new skill that we're teaching you here. This is something you already do without thinking. What we want to do now, though, is focus on that breath. So when you breathe in, just focus on the breath as it comes in, feel it coming in, traveling down to your abdomen, and then releasing it coming out. Now, there are loads of apps you can get. There are loads of YouTube videos and things on breathing technique where you can listen to someone talking you through that very simple process, but you don't necessarily need them in the context that we're talking now. We literally want you to think very clearly and very focused on the breath as it goes in and then goes out. And one trick I will leave you with the breath is that when you breathe out, just think relax. Just let your body relax. And you'll find on that out breath, when you do that, that it will actually give you, your whole body will feel relaxed. And it gives you just a moment of relief. If you can do that a few times every day, you'll be amazed at just what will happen in your life. You can do it, sitting on the train. You can do it in the car while you're driving. You can do it sitting at your desk, and it doesn't have to take any more than 30, 60 seconds. So everybody can do a little bit of intentional or mindful breathing. All right, the next tip. Thank you very much, Amanda. If you could put up the next slide, that would be amazing. Thank you. Nature. In science, there's a thing called biophilia. And when we go out in nature as humans, we have this interaction with nature, and it gives us a lot of things, not just the chemical, don't ask me now, oxygen and anyway, it's really good for us, but it actually there's a lot of other things going on as well. They've now found in the research, and it's called biophilia, and it's really, really good for us in a mindful way. So if you go out and go for a walk in nature for 5 minutes, half an hour, whatever you can do, and spend your time being present. So don't go walking with headphones. Don't go walking trying to sort out your latest problems or worrying about something that someone said to you yesterday or what's going to happen in 2 weeks. Go out and just be in that place right now and focus on what's going on around you. The idea is to be very present. The way to do that is to have all your senses alert. So what can you hear? What can you smell? What can you see? What can you taste? I know sometimes, as Amanda said, I go for runs. If I go for a run in a suburb, and it tends to be dinner time, I can taste almost what people are cooking. It's amazing. The same if you're going for a run in a forest after a rain, for example. There's amazing sort of things in the air that you can taste and sense. So really be in that place. What can you see around you? Are there animals? Are there beautiful flowers? All of that kind of thing. Just really take some time to be present in those moments. Again, it will really help you create space in your mind for the important things and a bit of stress relief. So the last tip, Amanda, if you bring up the next slide, that'd be great. This is one of my favorite because we all have moments just like we have breath. This is a moment we're all having right now. We can use any of the activities that we do every day, whether it's brushing your teeth, brushing your hair, eating, Or, as this picture shows, turning the tap on. This can be anything that you can use as this kind of anchor, just a regular activity that you do. So the next time you turn the tap on, and this is what I often do when I'm turning the tap on, I actually think for a moment about the water that's coming through that tap. I'm grateful for the fact that I can turn a tap on and get fresh drinking water. And not everybody is as lucky as I am to be able to do that. It is amazing, but we take it for granted. So when we put those little grateful moments in our life in a mindful way where we're really present with that moment, even if it is brushing your teeth, it creates that space. It creates moments in your day where you're not being stressed, where your thoughts are not overtaking you, the overwhelm is not there. You're just giving yourself that little cushion, if you like. So that's my anchor of moments of mindfulness. I hope that they have been able to, that they are something that you'll practice, because again, mindfulness is a practice thing. It's not, we never get to a destination. It's something that we all can do a little bit of every day. Many of us, as Emmy said in the chat, many of us do this anyway without even thinking. It's something that we actually tap into naturally as human beings. We just need to do it more and intentionally, especially at this time of year. I would say actually just every day for the rest of your life, and it will make your life less stressful. There will be more joy, and you'll be able to do more of the good that you are out here to do. So I hope that's helped. Any questions? I'll hand it over to Amanda now. Thank you for giving me the space to share this with everyone.
Thank you. I hope that all of you have now taken a very long, slow, deep breath in this particular space. I know I did after the stress of just a little stress check this morning, right? So thank you, Michelle. If you could get on and just do that with me every morning, like just your voice is calming, that would be great. So I do have a couple of questions that have come up. And also I just need to mention, Emmy, the morning coffee being an anchor, absolutely the same. If you meet me before my morning coffee and you meet me after my morning coffee, you've actually met two completely different people. So feel free to continue to put some questions in either the question and answer or in the chat. But I do have one specifically for Emmy. Emmy, it says, what if I scored high on everything? Does that mean I'm happy? Because I still have a little discontent, but I feel like I've scored the questions that I've scored, I scored high on all of them. Does that mean I don't need to change? And I will throw in the adverse of that, right? Which is if someone scored low on all, if they're like putting ones on everything, does that mean like that that something's wrong and something should happen? Can you kind of explain from there your ratings?
Yeah, happy to. So it's quite interesting. So the reason, first of all, that I use a sliding scale of 1 to 10 is because there's something in marketing, which is my other world outside of coaching, that I'm very passionate about, something called a net promoter score. And a lot of you might have heard about it, but it's that classic question which you get asked often, which is like, how likely would you be to recommend this product or service to a friend or a family member on a scale from 1 to 10? And in marketing, we talk about it because the 8, 9s, and 10s are contributors, and then you've got your, I think it's called detractors, which are the lowest answers, and the ones in the middle, they kind of get taken out, because it's like some people, to answer your question, Amanda, will often rate high, generally speaking, because they have a belief or they have a personality that tends to rank things high, because you should be grateful or you should be happy with what you have. So it's not necessarily saying if you scored really high and subsequently if you scored really low doesn't necessarily mean that you are desperately unhappy. It might just be that you're in a moment, and perhaps after going through Michelle's exercise as well, you're in a really honest and freeing space with yourself where you can be really honest about how you actually feel about it. So generally speaking, someone who scores high will be slightly more comfortable in their role if they've answered the questions honestly than someone who scored really low. But there are obviously action steps that you can take. I often say to people, the cycle that the average person spends in a role or in a career now is for most people between 2 and 3 years. So if you're starting to feel like your scores might have dropped, or you did an 8, 9, 10 really high in some things, but then your leader or your tasks or something else that I asked you about was a bit lower, that gives you a bit of an insight that it's probably time for that 3-legged stool to lean a bit more on the challenge side, or a bit more fun and playfulness perhaps. And on the flip side, if you scored really low and you're sitting in a dark, heavy space, because that can happen. I've been there. I'm sure Michelle and Amanda, you've been at times in your life and your career where things felt really impossibly difficult and you're really tired. My best recommendation is actually to go and talk to someone, whether that's a professional like me about career specifically, or even just some mental health general support to just get to a better place in your life. And the really cool thing as well is, just because you want things to get better, you don't have to get to like the perfect space in the first go. So I often talk to people who need to transition out of something that is toxic or negative. I talk a lot about the soft landing job. The soft landing job is the space where you can come and land and breathe and all the other beautiful things that Michelle taught you, and kind of catch your footing before you make the plan for the bigger step. It's like the base camp of Mount Everest, right? You don't have to go all the way to the top. You stop, you take stock, and then you kind of go from there. So that would be my general thing. And I would also encourage you to think about, if you scored in a particular way, how do you normally score on things? You know, when someone asks you a totally different question, you know, to survey something else, are you normally a high scorer or a low scorer by nature? Because most of us tend to have a tendency. So that was a slightly longer answer, but I hope that was helpful.
No, that is helpful. And it's true. In personality, especially, you have, because that's the area that I work in, right? And you have personalities that think, oh, I really dislike this part of my life, but I should be grateful. Like they literally discount their own feelings because there's almost a guilt to having a negative feeling, or there's a discomfort to having a negative, or not even to take the word negative out of it, but just like an uncomfortableness, right? And so it is those moments of truly self-reflecting and truly saying, these feelings are valid. It doesn't negate one from the other, right? My feeling miserable doesn't make me less grateful that I have a job, right? 100%. And I love what you said about the base camp as well. So when I left the incredibly toxic environment that I left 9 years ago, I had a mentor. Actually, I was doing work here in Botswana at the time, and he had flown over. He was also from Australia, go figure. But he had flown over at the time, and we were working at a hospital setting just to the north of where I sit now. And we were sitting in a parking lot, and I was just unburdening myself. He was a beautiful mentor that allowed that. And he looked at me and he said, your next job doesn't have to be your last job, meaning just get out, go work at a coffee shop if that will get you out of that thing, right? But I just felt like that was, it really changed the course of my brain, because I didn't have a place to jump to. I didn't have I was in a career, I didn't have a new career place to jump, but I needed to get out. So I think that that's super powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would definitely agree.
And then Emmy has asked a question, but I actually also have another question kind of around the same. So I'll ask Emmy's for Michelle, and then we'll also kind of follow up with it. So how do I create reminders to do mindful activities, because they don't feel natural to me? And I would say, in that same sort of thing, one of the questions that I had for you is, how do you make a moment versus it being just like okay, I meditated this morning, I turned on the tap and I felt something, like a checklist, right? Or a tick list. So how do you become mindful, Michelle?
How do you become mindful? Did you listen?
Yeah, I wasn't listening. Yeah.
So one of the reasons that we have anchors is that, especially an anchor like that you attach to something that you do all of the time, turn on the tap, brush your teeth, those kind of things. If you connect that, okay, when I turn on the tap, I've made a commitment to myself that I will now do that mindfully, for example. There are tech ways, which sort of, it almost feels like the opposite of mindfulness, but there are like tech things that you can get where simply as setting yourself an alarm every hour, for example, if you wanted to, that just reminds you to breathe. We all have smart watches that try and tell us to breathe, for example, as well. So there are ways to remind us to do it. It's a practice. I mean, it's like, you know, how many of us don't brush our teeth now? We weren't, you know, brushing our teeth is not something we have to do in order to continue to live, like eating and drinking and water and things like that. But we do, we all have that habit. So it is about creating a positive habit for yourself. And even though it's simple, as Emmy's pointing out, it's not always easy to create a new habit. So it just takes a little bit of discipline to create a habit, like you create any habit, actually. So it's probably not the easy answer Emmy might like, or that most of us would like, because we actually have to put some effort into it. And whether it's attaching it to something that you already do, which is why I love those ones like the tap and your toothbrush. I also notice when I go running now, I'm very mindful. I make sure everywhere I start a run, and I think, Emmy, you might have said that to me now, you started doing that a bit more, that just doing a body check-in, for example. So putting some of these little steps in. So it's not meditating for 4 hours. It's actually whatever you're already doing, adding it to it. I find we're always breathing. That's the easiest one. I actually find quite a lot now, especially if you can tie it to something like driving or something where you're doing that all the time as well. The breathing is something that you can do and adopt anytime, and it can become quite habitual as well, and beneficial, of course. So hopefully that's answered it a little bit. It's not simple, that particular one. You just have to remember to do it sort of semi-regularly, and you'll find that because it gives you so much back that you'll be more likely to continue to do it. Yes, there can be some box ticking if that works for you, or stars on a chart. But,
and then you get some peanut M&Ms, right? You put enough stars on your chart, and you get some peanut M&Ms at the end.
There you go. You've got it all sorted.
Well, and I also think just to kind of add to that, and I'm adding to, because we talked about it yesterday, is the allowing and the non-judgmentalism of just being. Like, if you come in, it's not, mindfulness isn't meant to, it can take you to a beautiful, safe, higher space. But if it just gives you a little tiny gap, right, that's still enough.
Mindfulness doesn't want you to get rid of your thoughts, including the ones that are horrible, including the emotions that make you feel bad. It's not about getting rid of them, as you rightfully said, Amanda. It's about allowing them to be there and accepting that they're there. There's actually, again, some research that's been done that shows that when we resist these bad feelings, they actually stay around and amplify. That's what the research has shown. So when you resist it, you're cutting it off. So you go like this, it actually grows in its intensity for you. When you just allow and sit with it and allow that emotions, negative in particular we're talking about, to happen, there's a natural, it'll reach a peak and then it flows off. And if you can think about it yourself, when things have happened and at first you think you'll never get over this, and then you'll realize that actually it's starting to wane. It may still exist forever for you, depending on how impactful the thing was, but it does just flitter away a little bit and it becomes less. But if we focus all the time on it, it becomes much worse.
Like my move to Botswana, which was really impactful. And now I could be here forever. We don't know. We don't know.
So don't focus on not wanting something because you'll get more of it, basically. So you just focus on, just allow it to be there, and it'll be better.
That is amazing. Well, thank you both for being here, for taking your time, for giving us your evening. I appreciate you both on a personal level. You have helped me so much in the last couple of years. And I know for those who are attending, who got the benefit of probably seeing you for the first time, that it has been incredibly beneficial if they were listening even just a little bit. So thank you both for this year-end check-in and kind of helping us get to the next part. For those of you who have listened to Michelle or you have listened to Emmy and you're like, I want some more time with them, you can get that. First of all, they are both on Team Trova, so you can go to Trova.Health and go up to clicking on the experts or find an expert, and both of them happen to show up in our list of expert providers. You can also take a look around and see kind of some of the other people that we've got on board there. However, for both Emmy and Michelle specifically, if you are here in this moment, we have a deal for you where you can get 50% off, $50 off of your first service with them. So you can go in, you can actually book a free consultation with them and just kind of talk through how they could possibly help you. And then which you could do first, or you can just go in and immediately book a session with them. I have worked with both of them. I assure you that they are absolutely people you are wanting to work with in your life. So you'll just use the code FreshStart50 at time, and I'll also put that in the follow-up email where you'll get this recording. Thank you so much for being with us today, for joining us in this Trova webinar series. Look for more. Please follow us on all of our social handles. You'll find us everywhere at Trova.Health. And so I look forward to seeing you all again. Have a wonderful, wonderful time. Thank you, Emmy and Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.